Hi, everyone, and welcome to the ninth edition of Stories from the Block Tailored to Technology. So, to give you a little bit of background, in June 2022, we launched Storyblok's first ever technology ecosystem. Ultimately, it's a collection of technology solutions that can be integrated together with Storyblok as the central content hub. We believe this will allow us to deliver the best digital experiences to our customers and to those of our partners. Today, for this ninth edition, with the help of our partners, obviously, we are super excited to share our journey and deep dive into the world of technology ecosystems. So, for those who don't know, I'm Selena, and I'm the partner marketing manager here at Storyblok. I'll be one of your hosts, along with Anna, and I'll leave it up to Anna to tell you a little bit more about what you should be expecting from this session.
Thank you, Selena, and hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here today and to be part of this amazing edition of Stories from the Block. My name is Anna, and I'm a partner content specialist here at Storyblok. Now, to begin with, we're going to give you some useful information around the event today. All of our talks are going to be live, so you're more than welcome to ask any questions. If you have any questions, post them in the comment section, and we will pass them over to our partners. And speaking of talks, Selena, could you please introduce our speakers for today?
Yeah, sounds good. So I'll briefly introduce the partners. Firstly, so we have Christopher Hawley, who's the global director at Commerce Tools, David Barth, senior director global at Algolia, Tim McMillan, director at Profound, Iris Schleifer, senior enterprise account executive at Big Commerce, Chris Bass, co-founder at Netlify. We'll also have people from the Storyblok side. We have Julius Hemingway, who's our analyst relations manager, and Alan Tanasi, technology partner manager. So, that being said, Anna, can you just tell us a little bit more about what we're actually going to be discussing?
Sure, my pleasure. We're going to start today's event with an interesting presentation on how to build an ecosystem. More specifically, if you're a startup in an ecosystem, what are the challenges you're going to be facing? Then we'll focus on the MACH Alliance and what the MACH Alliance, the technology ecosystems, and agencies have in common when it comes to being future fit and ready for any undertaking. And then finally, we'll end with their panel, which is focused on future fit technology stack and innovation. We'll do a deep dive into what helps an ecosystem thrive, especially if it's focused on a single goal of building creative, innovative, and flexible businesses that are built with the help of best of breed technologies and best practices. How does that sound, Selena?
Yeah, sounds good to me. I suggest we get started. We'll start with Christopher from Commerce Tools. For those who don't know, Commerce Tools is an industry leading e commerce software provider. And then we'll also be joined by David from Algolia. They help businesses build and optimize search and discovery experiences. I'll leave it to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna, Selena. Thank you very much for that presentation. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening, this afternoon, this morning, depending on which side of the world this event is finding you all. My name is Alin. I am a technology partner manager at Storyblok, and today I will be joined in this conversation around how to build a technology ecosystem by Christopher from Commerce Tools and David from Algolia. And I'll give the gentlemen a chance to introduce themselves, talk about their experience within the field, and then we'll jump to the actual conversation around the ecosystem, the tech ecosystem, how to build it, and what to be aware of, what are the challenges, and what are the benefits of building one. And in no particular order, maybe just alphabetical. Christopher, I'm going to pass the mic to you.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Alan. So Chris Hawley with Commerce Tools. I have been a software, hardware, and a services channels manager and salesperson over the years. I've seen it done well, seen it done poorly, and I'm hoping we can share the valuable and effective stuff today. And I'm looking forward to the discussion with David, who's always a wonderful person to have a conversation with.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, we've known one another for a little while now. I'm
I think we lost you, David. Or is it?
David, we've lost your
Okay.
audio. Well, Alan, it might be a very one-sided conversation if we can't fix this technical problem.
We should be actually, we should have been aiming for someone that has lip reading skills. It would have helped us a lot in the conversation now and to overcome the tech difficulties. But let's give David a few minutes until he maybe reconnects, and then we can jump into the conversation. These things usually happen when we maybe least expect them.
I like to make the joke that my silver hair comes from doing live demos in front of customers and from partners, because you can practice all you want and something will always. I was worried here. I'm broadcasting from my home office, and I'm expecting somebody's lawn service with a very loud leaf blower or something to be picked up by my mic. David, we see you.
embarrassment over or no?
No embarrassment.
No
we can hear you
embarrassment.
now, loud and clear.
Yeah.
Okay, my mute button was stuck. I could not unmute, so I apologize for that. And sorry for the delay. So my name is David Barth, work at Algolia, and I've been around the block like Chris for a while, doing the same kind of jobs. And today I'm his counterpart actually at Algolia, managing the technology partnerships for that company. So very looking forward to this discussion, guys, and sorry for the real disruption here.
No, this just confirms the fact that it's a live event. I saw someone made that comment, so I think it's very appropriate.
It was
So
planned.
Yeah,
That's right.
This was like in the magic tricks to make sure that it's actually something that we do. There are no strings attached or anything like that. It doesn't have a fake button. So, jumping to the conversation today and to the first topic of the Stories from the Block session 9. I want us to touch a bit on what does it mean to be a startup in the world of technology ecosystems, and not necessarily limited to that, in the sense that you always have the ability of learning new things around how you should build or upgrade your tech ecosystem if you have more experience in that sense. Now, businesses that start in this journey need to be aware of the advantages and of the power that the network effect has. And I think what's very important to mention here is that a solution becomes more desirable once users become more familiar with it, and as long as they actually understand what are the actual true benefits of it. And a tech partnership is much more than integrating product A with product B. An ecosystem is a partnership that extends beyond that. And I think the first question I would want to raise with you folks today is, what is actually a tech ecosystem? And this time I'm going to give David the mic. Hopefully he's not going to have the same issue. Maybe it was just bad karma initially.
Thank you. I think that joke is going to stay, right? So
No.
yeah, absolutely. So what's important in the world we live in is to know where you are, and often that's the case, and all of us here are there for that. Is we've decided to be a best of breed element of an ecosystem, and what it means is that you don't provide the full solution to the customer, so you have to understand where you sit into that environment, as if you were like the window of an entire house that the customer is trying to build. So by understanding that, you will also realize that everything around you is important, because your customer wants the house. He likes the idea of the window, and maybe he's very picky about it, but he wants the house. And there are people that are building it around you as well. So the ecosystem is a number of elements that allow for the customer to find and have what they're looking for. And across the pond, there are those monolith guys that are doing everything, and they're telling your customer that it's important to work with them because they can do everything. So you're not going to be able to respond to that. So you need friends to go against that and work with it. So the tech ecosystem is who are your friends that can help you build the solution for the customer that the customer is looking for.
Thank you very much for that. Christopher, what's your take on
and so I build on that with, specialists beat generalists all the time. And, ecosystems have been around since the first MS-DOS shipped with the first, PC. We saw it Wintel, something as simple as the old Computer Shopper magazine that you could buy at the bookstore. And then what we saw was, as David mentioned, the bundling. So you go through these, just different evolutions of tech. In the 1990s, you started with these specialty systems integrators with the arrival of 3-tier client server enterprise applications. And so you just get these natural, I guess, grouping or clusters of product and services in particular industries or in particular geos. And to David's point, nobody can do it all by themselves. And so what you'll find is, as we went from proprietary operating systems to open source and community type stuff, we're moving that way with this next generation of composable commerce. There is no suite that does the 11 or 12 things that you need to run a modern e-commerce site. There aren't anybody who does 5 well. We all do 1 or 2 things extraordinarily well. And by working together, and the whole idea of open standards and a community certification like the MACH Alliance is a way that we get there, leveraging each other's strengths and building a dynamic, growing environment. What we would hope to have is in any of the 8 or 9 subcategories of e-commerce software, you want 3 to 5 active vendors in there with different price points, different value propositions, different approaches. That just grows this ecosystem of very healthy, innovative vendors, and collectively we all work together and grow our composable commerce world.
that? That seems a very accurate and complete answer from the both of you. What I would maybe want to add, and this is not necessarily because our audience is not it does not understand what the concept of a tech ecosystem means, but I want to maybe take a step outside of the whole idea of tech and just focus on the word ecosystem, which probably is much more familiar because it's associated with living organisms, but in a way very familiar to what a tech ecosystem does, in the sense that with living organisms, you have like this network of complex and interconnected components that collaborate to build relationships, to create communities where they can get what they need, so security, food, shelter, support of any kind. But at the same time, it's very, very similar to what we see in the world of technology ecosystems. So in the day-to-day life, every one of us probably uses like several, maybe even dozens of applications on a day-to-day basis, even if we talk about work or if we talk about doing our jobs. And it doesn't really matter which department you're in. That's very much related to what you were saying, Krista, and you, David, as well, the fact that there's no one solution that can provide everything. And one of the reasons why I think we call it an ecosystem as to, opposed to just a collection of apps or an app stack, for example, is because it describes what I was saying a bit earlier when I was referring to living organisms. They need to interact with each other to make sure that they deliver an experience. But we've defined what a tech ecosystem means. Now, what is it composed of? What is the makeup of a tech ecosystem? And maybe I'm going to want you, Chris, to go first this time and give us your opinion on it.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's a couple of things, and it really gets down to there's an environment that all of this executes in. So in 2022, we're talking about cloud environments. And so you've got AWS, you have Google, you have Azure. Those tend to be, if you will, solar systems. And solar systems have planets and gravitational attraction. And so you've got the deployment environment. And I'm speaking to you as a software guy most of my life. Software vendors pick which of these galaxies they're going to play in. Some play in all, some choose a single one. So you've got that deployment environment. Then there's the people factor. You know, we're automating more and more of the lower level routine stuff through technology, but you still have to put it together. It takes a skilled person who can take the technological reality, and then the business needs, put everybody at the table, have that conversation, and then be able to implement that. And that's very important. And then the last piece is the actual technology providers. You know, you have content management, you have search, you have promotions, you have personalization, all of these type of things. They're an equal piece. Not that everyone needs all 10 or 11 subcategories of capabilities, but there's a core group of 3 to 5, depending on where you are in industry and your approach, that you need. So it's that combination, and it varies. Some are strong in specific geos, others are global. You know, some are very specific to an industry, and other are what we call horizontal, and they can plug into anyone. So it's that piece, and it has evolved over time. Sometimes there's been less focus on the provisioning environment and more on the people. Maybe we're in a position now where, because of the cloud, there's a little more focus on the software piece of it. So it's like your organism example. Sometimes it's fat, sometimes it's thin, sometimes it's warm, sometimes it's cold. And I think you just see that in the people, the deployment, and then the actual capabilities.
David, I'm sure
Yeah,
you have something to add.
I do. I love what Chris is saying on that stack, and the fact that you have to pay attention to it. Another thing that we tend to be very aware of is to look at it from a sales and commerce perspective as well, right? An ecosystem, of course, there's the importance of the tech stack and where you fit, who you plug in with, and who will actually drive business for you, who will get business from you. Also, I think it's important to look at the second ring as well of what I like to refer as influencers of your ecosystem. So I'll give you a clear example. We sit generally between the PIM and the commerce platform. The commerce platform sits generally between the PIM and us. So commerce tools will work with a bunch of PIMs to get data about the catalog, and we will index that data against commerce tools. That said, we are talking to a lot of PIM partners as well, because they are talking to the same people and trying to convince the same people to assemble a solution that will deliver the website that Chris was talking about, for instance. And this is important to not just look at who is close and connected to you, but at what makes the fabric of what your customer is looking for. And I think we're doing that very well. The three of us here, for instance, are very connected. I mean, it's easy. We from an Algolia perspective, take information from both of the platforms you represent, but you also have that network around you that I don't see really, because I'm not connected to it, but I'm interested in talking to. And I think we need to elevate the story on those components to tell the full story to the customer. And that's an important piece of I think, of the components of an ecosystem, is to look beyond just who you're connected to.
That's a very good point there from both of you. And I think it's very, very important to understand what happens outside the gates of your own solution. And it's important to see who's around, who is actually, or what's the best solution that you need to plug in, but at the same time, who are the ambassadors for you as well. I want to maybe take the outsider role a bit for this question again. And as I was speaking about living organisms the first time, I think there are a few other components that folks don't often talk about when it comes to what makes a tech ecosystem. And I think it goes back a bit to the basics. It can start with schools, where you actually have like the first layer, the first brick in educating people around technologies, and that's their first encounter with it. Then you have like these accelerators or tech hubs, which are kind of critical when it comes to sustaining the ecosystem and developing and supporting early stage companies, which are coming from universities. And then I think there's an important part that we as established businesses play within this field, in the sense that we need to back up these upcoming technologies, these upcoming solutions, which obviously are based on certain principles that we need them to adhere to, and not need if as in force them, but as you were both mentioning a bit earlier about the MACH Alliance, and as this is one of the topics for today, it's very important for us to understand that we can associate ourselves with players that do have the same vision, the same objectives, and the same goals.
No, I think you hit on a very good point, Alan. There's a very famous U.S. college football coach named Bear Bryant who coached at a University of Alabama. And the stories are the first day of practice, he'd bring the team around and he'd say, raise your hand if you called your parents today. And the guys are like, well, why would we do that? And his point was, no one gets here alone. You wouldn't be here without your parents. Call them and thank them. And so I've always been struck by that. And you mentioned some of the community. I was at IBM years ago, and we actually sponsored with one of the local colleges, Marist College, a course in programming for the mainframe, because there were lots of mainframes, but the technology wasn't considered trendy or modern, but there's a huge demand in the community for it. So, you know, technology leaders in New York would actually go and teach these classes. I've seen examples where local community colleges have had specific programs for machine tooling and some of the automation that goes into many of our industries. It's another example of that we don't necessarily think of, but your comment definitely triggered that. I think it's a very important point. Ecosystems are broader and deeper than the small piece that we might actually deal with every day.
Yeah, that's true. Now, I guess we also need to talk about the importance of having a vibrant ecosystem, and what does it do for businesses? What does it do for other technology partners? What does it do for agency partners that we work with? And what does it do for customers as well? And David, I would want your opinion on that first.
Sure. Yeah. So innovation is something that's obviously driven by a vibrant ecosystem, because we are all pushing one another, trying to bring more innovation in our sphere. And the sum of all the innovation we bring is bigger than anybody who would have to do all of it on its own. And I think the example of the MACH Alliance, which we are also a part of, and we are very excited about this alliance because it brings that. I mean, it's an environment where even competitors can talk to one another and try to understand how to make the playing field more attractive to everybody, and make sure that it serves the customer. So innovation is clearly something that is going to bring to our customers. The other thing that we're paying a lot of attention to is the ecosystem of SIs and agencies that are tasked by their customers to actually implement solutions that work. So we are trying to associate with the likes of you and Commerce Tools to create environments where they can learn about us. So we were somewhere in Europe with Chris recently, where we did that. Commerce Tools was hosting a partner summit for all its community. And it was a great moment for us to galvanize, in a way, all these service partners that are day in and day out delivering solutions to the customers. So innovation and being able to allow for the delivery of extremely good solutions through that network, I think are two of the things that a vibrant ecosystem can do for us.
Yeah, I keep coming back to competition is good for our end clients. When I was in grammar school, there was one long distance carrier in the United States, and it was expensive and limited. And then now we probably have 20 different telephone companies or telephone services, plus all of the innovations in cellular technology, which I couldn't have imagined when I was in grammar school. Well, extend that to our world. David mentioned agencies and SIs. What you get in the competition, you get industry specialization, you get price point specialization. All of these things make it accessible to more and more people. Not everyone needs a fully enterprise enabled, custom configured thing. Some of them just are happy with a mainstream, good value, drive a Jetta, not a Audi R8 or something. There's a marketplace that's got a wide variety for everyone. And I think that helps. In addition to, in the PIM space, in the checkout space, all of these different areas we can talk about, to have 3 or 4 competitors who each have their own innovation, their own view, gives better focus, better capabilities. It increases price competition for the end client, so they get a better deal. Ultimately, that competition is better value, better customer outcome, more success for everyone. If we grow the pie in the community, there's room for everyone to be successful.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I think it's also important to mention the fact that it gives you, and this is closely related to what you were saying earlier, Chris, the ability to become a specialist within a specific field. So you don't need to have a product that does 10 different things, and maybe one of those things is actually a great solution, but the other 10 are just there because you want to have a bigger piece of the pie. But it's also about the reach that you have, because sometimes having an ecosystem or adding to your existing ecosystem a solution from maybe a certain geography, which was not a focus for you, can help you, give you that push in extending your reach to new markets, ones that maybe you were not very focused on at some point. So you need to have friends, local friends. It's better when you go to visit a specific city, for example, to take a tour with a local person, rather than, I don't know, something which is an actual business that only wants to make money out of this. That's at least my personal opinion on it. I think we also need to answer maybe one last question around what do ecosystems do? Let's put ourselves in the shoes of the businesses that use these components of the ecosystems. What would you guys think are the steps that they need to go through to identify how they should build their perfect ecosystem? And I'm using perfect here a bit loosely because perfect changes depending on the state in which your business is at any given point. Chris, maybe you want to go first for this last one.
Yeah, sure. So, there are a couple of big decisions, that you make in technology. I mean, just something as simple as just use my phone. You decide you're either in the Android world or you're in the iPhone world. There are those big decisions, and there are pluses and minuses. You choose a database, you choose an e-commerce provider. There are 15 e-commerce providers in the marketplace, and so skills, availability of SIs, specific packages for your industry. You have to make a first decision based on that. But then once you get into that subset of folks, ultimately what it means is it gives you more predictability, security, and positive outcomes, because you look for things like partners who are certified with the skills. So all of the software companies have some type of certification and skill training. That shows expertise. We, as David and I, as ISVs, we have integrations, real code that's been certified by responsible people that says that everything works together. So once you get in that ecosystem, you start to get better predictability. There's a confidence and security with a group of successful people. You get references, you get recruitment skill sets, things like that. So I would say it gets predictability and security is the value of the network, plus choice and competitiveness and all that kind of stuff. But clearly it's security and predictability, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And add to that there's a couple of things that I think are really important when you're starting to build a technology partnership like this is align with your ideal customer profile. Try to find people that are aligned to that. If you at Algolia, for instance, we really started with the developer and worked with the developer a lot. So our technology partnership strategy was very focused on that. Now, after 5 or 6 years, we started to go up into the enterprise, and it has to change completely. Suddenly, we have to talk to folks like Commerce Tools because that's where they work, and we have to understand how to express the value we bring we bring to the customers together with them. So the last point I make is build a team of storytellers. To me, partner account manager or technical account manager or lead, whatever you want to call them, need to be good storytellers. They need to tell stories to your company, to your sellers. How do you sell into an environment that has that stack? You have to tell the story. You have to tell the story to the partners of your partners? You have to tell the story to your partner. You have to tell the story to the world, and you have to tell the story to the customers themselves. Because when the customer is asking Commerce Tools, who do you integrate with well for search, they don't really ask about how it works day to day. They ask about, do you work well with that partner? Because we're going to have you guys work together for us. So we need to make sure that we are not bringing people that can't work with one another into the field. So all of those are stories that you have to build and express. And don't chew too much. Don't try to bite too much, because you're going to never deliver anything. So that would be my advice for the end.
Yeah, David just hit on something. I think it's called the paradox of choice, in that you have dozens or hundreds of customizations, and it just confuses people to paralysis. So one of the very valuable things about an ecosystem is actually it kind of limits your options to a smaller number of more well-defined. So people don't need more choices. They need fewer choices, better positioned for them. And I think you get that benefit. A healthy ecosystem doesn't say, here's everything, take your pick. It comes back and says, our expertise, our specialization in here says there are, A, B, or C option. Pick from 3, not from 23. I think that's a very important piece as well. And that tends to these natural clusters of technology. So we're all MACH certified partners here that we're talking about. We share the same approach to technology. We're more likely to work together, effectively than alternate technology A or legacy technology B. So these natural clusters, they don't just happen. I mean, it's a lot of work between people to find these commonalities and make sure everything functions well. But that's a big part of the ecosystem, is that rationalization of the paradox of choice.
Your example, Chris, actually reminded me about something that I've learned probably around 15 years ago. I went to a workshop once, and the guy used a very good example, and he made an analogy similar to yours. If you go back home, you're hungry, you open the fridge, it's full of food, you're probably gonna say, I'm just gonna order in because I don't like anything that I have in the fridge. But at the same time, if you only have like 1 or 2 options, then you're probably gonna end up eating what you have in the fridge. So I guess it's the same with picking the best technologies for you. What I wanted to add from my perspective was that businesses rarely, if not never, they don't start from zero when it comes to what they have in their current tech portfolio. So they usually have a few technologies implemented there. The first step from my perspective should be curating the solutions that you already have there. Identify what are the blockages, what are the disconnects, and what sort of information silos you have, maybe which are preventing your current processes. So you need to remove the ones that are not helping you achieve your business goals and replace them with more suitable solutions for you and for the business and for the stage in which you are right now. Then a next step would be to identify what additional tools you can add to your tech stack, and which are the solutions that best fit or are the best ones that you can implement, and how easy it is to implement those into your current tech stack. And with that, just opening the floor for you gentlemen to see if you would like to add any final advice for our viewers today when it comes to building the perfect tech ecosystem in their company, no matter how old the company is, no matter how old they've been dealing with partnerships, because I guess you're never too old to learn something new.
Yeah, I'd say focus on your business, because sometimes I see people trying to build a beautiful ecosystem. You need to deliver to the company revenue at the end of the day, and these ecosystems are built for that. If you find the right people, the right partners, you will help them, they will help you, and you will thrive. But focus on what is actually in line with the measures that you have of your business, and how it helps grow. And have
So
an empty fridge.
I would echo that. Years ago, I worked in a middleware business that was super cutting edge technology at the time, and it never failed. Everybody fell in love with the tech, and I'm not a tech guy. I'm a business guy, and I like to say, fall in love with the business value of the technology for your end client. That's the focus, to echo on what David said. And the other thing is, never do the big launch. You want to bite it in little pieces. So have a vision. A good CIO or tech leader will enunciate a vision for the next 3 to 5 years. But big bang never works. You want to take small phased projects. You want to build on success. Building on success is the most important thing, and fall in love with the business value of your technology, and you get that from your ecosystem.
Very, very insightful information from both of you. Really happy to have. I think there's room for another analogy, and you two gentlemen have been like wine today for myself and for our viewers as well. The older, the wiser, and the more knowledge you've brought to our audience today. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you for being here today. Thank you for helping us put together this event. And with that, I will pass on the mic to our colleagues, Anna and Selina. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, what an amazing walk. That was great. And thank you, Christopher. Thank you, David. Thank you, Alan. Selina, what did you think of their talk?
Yeah, I thought it was great. Again, thank you. That was an amazing talk. I think it's just a great way of reiterating how important a tech ecosystem is, how crucial it is, to grow your business. And I think what David said at the beginning, determine who your friends are and how you can help each other out to achieve a common goal. So yeah, very good talk. We also spoke a lot about the MACH Alliance, which is quite convenient because that's our next talk. Anna, if you want to present the speakers.
Yeah. So like you said, we're now going to move to our MACH Alliance ready talk with our own Julius from Storyblok. We're also going to be joined by Tim from Profound. And Profound is a digital agency that helps brands build their B2B and B2C strategies. And we're also going to have Iris from BigCommerce, who is an e-commerce platform that empowers merchants to build their businesses online.
Thank
The
you.
floor is all yours, guys.
Hello, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
Can you both hear me okay? Is the sound good for everyone?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Yep.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining Stories from the Block number 9. I'm really excited to be here with both of you today and have a chance to do a bit of a deep dive into the MACH Alliance. What does it mean in the first place? It's a term that's often thrown around and that's often talked about, but what maybe we can dive a little bit into kind of the origin story of the MACH Alliance and really ultimately what it's trying to achieve. And I want to explore a little bit, obviously, we as tech vendors have a very direct role with the MACH Alliance, but I'm also very excited to talk to you today, Tim, and see a little bit about the role that agencies can also play within the MACH Alliance. But maybe before I get started, I wanted to pass it over to you to introduce yourselves real quick. Iris, would you like to get started and just tell us a little bit about what you do and where you're based as well? I always think that's an important question to cover off.
Yeah, absolutely. So by way of introduction, I'm Iris Schiefer. By day, I'm an enterprise account executive at BigCommerce, a composable SaaS e-commerce platform, but actually wearing my other hat for the purpose of today's session, which is my role as a member of the MACH Alliance Growth Council. I am based in London, in my home office, as you can see at the moment. And also just double checking, can everybody hear me okay? I've had a couple of connection issues with the stream, so I'm hoping everything's all right.
It's all good.
Yep.
Thank you so much for that, and it's such a pleasure to have you here today. Tim, why don't you take it over and tell us a little bit about your work at Profound?
Sure. So good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Tim McMillan. I'm the CEO and founder here at Profound. Profound is a digital experience design agency. We help customers with the full range of kind of digital projects, right through from CX and design up front, right through to implementation, support, optimization at the end of projects. And I guess what's really brought me to the topic today is that about 4 years ago, we actually made quite a bold decision, decided that actually for all of our digital implementations, we were only going to work with and partner with kind of headless, as they were known at the time, technologies. So we were one of the first here in the UK to take that approach, and really happy to share some of the insight and the ups and downs of the journey that we've had along the way over the last few years.
Wonderful. I always like to talk to innovative people that are willing to give things a risk and to try out new things. So that should be good fun. By means of quick introduction for myself, so I'm Julius. I work as an analyst relations manager at Storyblok. That means I get to hear a lot of industry insights. I get to work a lot with businesses like Forrester and with Gartner and IDC. And as part of that role, I also had the desire to work together with the MACH Alliance and to take that relationship a bit further within Storyblok. I think we joined a while back, but there's a lot of room for us to make the most out of the MACH Alliance, and that's what I'm really hoping that we can do over the course of the coming year. So yeah, I look forward to having this conversation today, and maybe to kick it off already, Iris, I wanted to start with you. So I wanted to ask, just in general, for those that don't actually know, for those that might, that might be here today, but that see this term being thrown around all the time, but aren't so sure what it exactly actually means and what it all embodies. Would you be happy to give us a bit of an introduction into what is the MACH Alliance? What does the term mean? And yeah, what can we learn?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that are unfamiliar with the MACH Alliance, the Alliance is a not-for-profit organization that was founded in 2020 with the aim of helping companies adopt a more composable technology stack, kind of that best of breed focused approach. So the founding members were all either composable technology providers, namely commerce tools and Amplience, or system integrators with a composable first mindset. And the two SI founding members were EPAM Systems and Valtech. And they found in their conversations, as have many other members, that although a lot of organizations were keen from moving away from that monolithic stack, they struggle to find the best approach for their business and kind of how to assess and make sense of this myriad of different technologies that were available to them. So the aim of the MACH Alliance was to take on some of that assessment lift and create a definition of what best of breed really means in the market today. B, put in place a certification process to ensure member technologies and SI met that set of criteria. And C, allow that flexibility of choice across technology categories and kind of create a community for sharing best practices and educating around MACH. And I know I've said MACH several times, and you mentioned kind of what does the definition mean? We love an acronym in this industry. So to provide a bit of context around what those elements mean in terms of our certification, the first piece is the solution microservices based? Can those functionalities be developed and deployed independently? Do those microservices have their own domain and data store? The second piece is, are the applications connected via webhooks or API calls? Do the solution providers have 100% API coverage? And are those APIs written in best practice query languages like GraphQL or REST? i.e., does the organization have an API first approach? The third letter is cloud native. So we're looking at 100% cloud native multi-tenant SaaS solutions. So there shouldn't be any versions to the product. Customers shouldn't have to install their own updates or patches. And from an SI perspective, we're looking to have engineers and architects trained in one or more of the major cloud providers, and also have a partnership agreement in place with them. And the last letter, the H, is for headless. So either is the solution provider headless, is the front end logic decoupled from the back end, or as an SI, do you implement headless stacks? And the aim around that is really to kind of further agility, speed to market, and unlock potential for those customized sort of omni-channel best of breed customer experiences. So I hope that provides a little bit of an overview of what the Alliance does and how it can help organizations.
Absolutely. That was very, very interesting. Actually, I want to piggyback off of that, and also something that you said at the beginning, Tim. So you mentioned that a couple of 4 years ago or so, as a business, you guys decided that you were going to only do MACH. What was the thinking behind that, and what was also that process like at the time? Was it a very scary decision, or was it something that just made such sense that you didn't even have to think twice about it?
A little bit scary because it was something new. We'd spent the best part of, 10 or more years working with more traditional kind of DXP all-in-one suite products. And I think what really tipped the balance for me was just how I felt that those products were stopping bringing value to clients. Quite often some of those products have been in situ in clients' organizations for several years, and they've been bended and buckled beyond standard kind of implementations to achieve the things that clients wanted to do. But those modifications often made upgrading very, very difficult, very, very expensive, and quite a lot of investment was going into just keeping a technology stack alive, and we were being kind of held back from actually delivering further value and initiatives to our clients through experience innovation and things like that. So we sensed from our clients there was this real resentment of this permanent upgrade cycle that was going on there, and all that investment that was going in just to keep some software licensed and up to date and supported could have been going into more kind of value add areas inside the organization. So that was really a key driver. And the second key thing for us as well was that we were getting ourselves quite frustrated with, particularly if we worked in partnerships on projects, with always kind of designing the same thing over and over again, because there was then this fear of actually bending or modifying the technology. So people wanted to keep it as standard as possible. And particularly in e-commerce, quite a lot of the e-commerce experience is homogenous. And if you're only focusing on designing and thinking about the experience of those homogenous pieces, and you're not really getting to detail the stuff that makes a bit more difference to the customer, it becomes a little bit kind of laborious and same old. So we wanted to get to a situation where we could use technologies to enable the experiences that the customers of our clients told us they wanted to have with our clients, and to unlock more value for our customers. So those were the real key drivers behind our choice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's something that we hear so often as well. Ultimately, when businesses decide that they do ultimately wish to make that switch and implement those MACH principles, it's like often coming from a place as well of having old legacy systems that at some point you're just having to really throw developers at. That's actually one of the most common reasons. But it definitely resonates in terms of what you're saying in joining the MACH Alliance and what a process that is. I can tell from my own experience actually when I was before I joined Storyblok, I was working already with Storyblok on their strategy together with Forrester. And I remember at the time when the topic came up for the first time, it's actually the first time that I got into contact with the entire subject of the MACH Alliance. We organized a call with a couple of analysts in order to discuss the MACH Alliance and whether this was something that was what role this was going to be playing over the course of the coming years, and where that was going to be headed. And what resonated really at the time already was the fact that on the one hand, we make so many investments regularly into our developer community. Our developer community is something that we've been working on for a very long time. We organize so many conferences and participate in so many conferences with our developer community. So we have that area that we've been working on, but then we realized that they basically recommended, well, there's another community that you can also be a part of and where you can also ultimately have a really big impact in terms of educating the market, in terms of bringing forward those principles. And that was ultimately also one of the big reasons why we decided to join the MACH Alliance. Iris, I wanted to come back to you and ask, to me, the one of the biggest pieces of the MACH Alliance is what we can do together in order to educate the market and bring forward those principles. Where do you see the role of the MACH Alliance and the future of the MACH Alliance when it comes to that?
Yeah, I think a couple of different initiatives there. Obviously, there is more being done in terms of fostering that community, not only in terms of Alliance members, but also people who are interested in learning about MACH, organizations or SIs that are looking to kind of like take, as Tim said, that more kind of composable approach. So working on putting together more events like in different locations, putting together those educational resources. And I think especially on the education piece, I mean, there's been a lot of evangelization done. And there's a lot of content out there that kind of talks a lot about the principles, what is MACH, what are some of the benefits, but not a lot of it is kind of grounded in those real life examples. Okay, like how did an organization actually go from, say, a monolithic structure? What was the kind of process for them? What were the elements that they replaced first? How did they work together with their SI? Like which pieces of, which elements of the stack maybe like aren't they taking that approach to? Because it's pretty rare to have a fully 100% MACH stack. Like it's very rare to see that. So trying to find more of those examples, trying to bring ambassadors onto our program who've implemented those stacks working for those larger organizations. So trying to build that and trying to kind of have those different examples and use cases that folks can relate to.
Yeah, that's incredible. Tim, how do you see it? Do you find that often you're the people to bring the concepts of the MACH to new clients when you get in touch with them? How do you see that education piece in the market? Or is it something where businesses have already identified the need for it and will then reach out to you?
I think it's a bit of both. It depends on whether there's a fairly forward-thinking CTO in place, because quite often they would lead the conversation with the vision about this is how our enterprise architecture is going to evolve over time, and they'll be the driving force behind that initiative. But in other times in other companies that maybe don't have such experience or even that role in place, they rely on agencies for their guidance and their advice, and you have to make it less about the technology in, when you're talking to the business, and actually more about the value it's going to bring, how it's going to change things for them, what IP they're going to own, what they're going to save, what the experience is going to be like for the customer, and sell it through the concepts through business value rather than technology value. So I think that's where agencies really have a strong role to play here, is helping deal with both of those personas within an organization that might be facing some kind of challenge, because ultimately you're only going to start thinking about changing things when you have a problem or a change, or you're looking to improve things or make cost savings or something like that. So yeah, being able to bridge the gap between the business and the technology is something that I think agencies are really well positioned to be able to do, and should be leading with, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have an example of a time where you were able to do such an implementation particularly effectively?
So we quite often find in the B2B space that if an organization has got to a point where it's got an IT team and a marketing team, and they made investments in technology, quite often you'll find in very specific verticals in B2B, there'll be an industry specific ERP system running the business. And much like I kind of described earlier, that ERP system does 80% perhaps of what the business needs to do, but that last 20% normally gets done as customization on top of that system. And then that system becomes hard to maintain, hard to scale, hard to adapt, and hard to move away from. So in a couple of instances, we've been working with clients to kind of roll back the customizations that they've made in their ERP systems, and actually create, or bring in headless or best of breed technologies to deliver that capability. And then over time, we, in a very kind of considered and programmatic way, we are taking away features and capabilities of these ERP systems, which are quite often quite old, no longer very well supported, or not even able to, in some instances that we bumped into, users can't even multitask within them. So actually putting new heads on top of these technologies to enable people to multitask and to be more efficient and do more value add tasks in their day job in these B2B organizations is something we do quite a lot as well. So we've got one particular client where we've done that, and I can remember we've been working with them for a couple of years now, and we had some really nice feedback about 6 months ago when we actually released a new head on the customer service desk's kind of interface. And the head of the customer service wrote to us and said, for the first time ever, my team have gone home at 4 o'clock because they're so much more efficient since it was launched. And that is really real great value to demonstrate to a customer, and that really vindicates the choices to actually say, okay, well, you can't replace what you've got there in the ERP system all in one go, because you'll be doing it for a long time. You'll be forever waiting for value to arrive, and your requirements are going to change over time. So let's just fix some of the pain in small, easy to manage chunks and release it iteratively over time. And the more of that you do within these organizations, the more value they see, the more they want to invest in it. And then before you know it, you've gracefully kind of decomposed that monolithic or that legacy kind of ERP system, and the clients actually being able to do more for their customers, and their users are actually having a much more pleasurable and enjoyable and value add time at work.
Yeah, that's such a great story. I love that story. Also, when I heard about it for the first time, that was super interesting. Iris, what sort of advice would you give to businesses that are looking to be a bit more MACH ready and that want to go into this whole architecture?
Yeah, actually, I was going to say specifically on Tim's example, like that's an area that we, especially on the Growth Council, are exploring more in terms of, I think a lot of people think about MACH in terms of front end technology, but actually oftentimes the blocker is kind of like, having that overdeveloped back end technology, and it's kind of hard to know where to start untangling functionality from that kind of like monolithic siloed web. And I think there's no kind of one size fits all template. Like each organization is different, each use case is different. They're all going to be using these technologies in different ways. But I think obviously trying to keep the focus on using the technologies in the way that they were intended to be used, not overdeveloping, kind of moving towards that best of breed approach. As I say, it's kind of hard to create a template. So I would, to come back to the educational resources piece, we're trying to kind of like look at like those different use cases and routes to market, because I think we've seen a big shift away from this kind of rip and replace approach as well, kind of moving towards that more sort of, I guess, iterative approach to replatforming or replacing the technology stack, kind of looking at those business critical components and the dependencies, and then seeing where each of like, what is the right order to replace them, what other systems are going to be affected. And that's really where the SI members of the Alliance and sort of those supporting composable technology sitting outside of the Alliance really, come into play. And like that experience is absolutely invaluable to a MACH implementation.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. No, and it's something also where I think as an ecosystem, as a MACH ecosystem, beyond also any members, any businesses which are helping implement the MACH principles, any businesses which are looking to implement the MACH principles, is something where we all stand to benefit from each other's successes. So that was also one of the biggest reasons at the end of the day why we decided that we wanted to join the MACH Alliance. Is if you look at the content management area specifically now, just speaking from our personal experience, you've got a ball which is, this gigantic, which is the traditional content management systems, and of those, it makes sense. 60% of all websites in the world are actually on WordPress. And then you've got this smaller point in comparison, which is the MACH content management systems, the headless content management systems. And I fundamentally believe that is a question of time until, those balls are going to switch positions, and until these principles are going to be something that is commonly accepted. But where we are at the moment in time, you notice that we all benefit from the success that we're having as MACH members, and as bringing the MACH principles further. So that was one of the biggest reasons why we wanted to join as well, and see it grow and be part of that growth. And as I go on to the topic of the growth of the MACH Alliance, where do you see the future of the MACH Alliance going, Iris? What do you think is what's on the cards, but also what is it gonna mean for the industry in general, and where are we headed?
Yeah, I'd start off saying that like I am not, a purist by any means. We as BigCommerce, for example, we work with plenty of technologies and SIs that aren't part of the MACH Alliance. So I don't think I think it's kind of like a sort of, a textbook of like, what does like best of breed mean? And, we want to kind of continue to like have that rigor in there, but it's by no means sort of an exhaustive list of, like the technologies that are out there. There's new technologies being developed every day. There's new approaches, different SIs taking that approach as well. I think for the Alliance, again, like the part of the focus is, of course, maintaining that rigor, maintaining flexibility of choice. So making sure, there is that selection of technologies across different categories. And a big focus of interest for the Alliance is also, it's a technology category that was launched last year called enablers. So it could actually be solution providers as well. So these are sort of companies that might not directly provide MACH solutions or implement MACH stacks, but they're critical to kind of bringing MACH architecture to life, or supporting new and faster routes to market, or sort of specific use cases for different verticals. So for software, these enablers would be, say, supporting those kind of functional domain specific components of MACH architecture, but might not meet that criteria themselves. So it could be something like data storage or monitoring or payments. So, kind of really looking at like how these MACH stacks are really being brought to life, and some of those technologies that are helping to do that, and not kind of like just taking that, linear approach of like, this is MACH, this is not.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think that's something where the SIs and agencies will ultimately play such a massive role to really also shape how this is being implemented. I know from personal experience, sometimes you hear about ways that your solutions are being implemented that you could have never imagined yourself previously. And agencies are out there doing some of the most innovative things with MACH solutions. How do you see the role of the agency in the future of the MACH Alliance, Tim? What do you think agencies stand to benefit from the MACH Alliance, and alternatively also, what do you think the MACH Alliance will benefit from agencies?
I think I see it as a very symbiotic relationship, really. I think there needs to be a very close-knit community between agencies and the other partners in the alliance, because we could be a bit of a mouthpiece for clients, right? So we spend a bit more time with clients than perhaps the vendors do. The vendors might be more involved up front in the selling stage, but we live through the implementation, we do the ongoing support, and we've got our ear to the ground with what things are going on in the marketplace, in that competitor space, that they're going to want to pounce upon from an opportunity point of view. So that kind of insight can really help organizations like yourself to develop features, either ideas, look for different parts of the ecosystem that need to be supported. And I also think that the MACH Alliance have probably got a role to play to help us deliver value faster. Keep building on that ecosystem, bringing to life more things. That means that we can invest our clients' money into doing the more interesting, difficult things that they want to solve, not the things that you end up doing time and time again with customers. There, bringing together more options in the ecosystem for us to accelerate through projects would be really, really helpful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. So I see that we're almost at the end of time. So I want to make sure that before we finish off, we get to one of the questions that was asked to us in the chat, and which kind of also ties into the future of the MACH Alliance. So this question, which was asked by Maria, which revolves around the possibility that MACH standardizes principles of interoperability, so that tech ecosystems can be perfectly interchangeable. So I'm curious what your view is on that, both of you, and how you see that. Maybe we can start with you, Iris, and then move on to you, Tim.
Yeah, I think it's firstly, great question, Maria. I think it's a yes and no answer from me. I think obviously the aim of the Alliance is to kind of standardize the principles of interoperability and kind of define that best of breed approach. But I think it's very rare, as I say, for most organizations to have that fully maxed stack. Every dependency is different. So there can't ever be, I think, a kind of template for deployment in that way. You can't really standardize that process because of how different organizations are. So I think the aim really should be to kind of adopt that composable approach for as many experience critical functionalities as possible, kind of start slowly, take that iterative approach. The whole idea, I think, as well around, being microservices based is that you can kind of build out those individual pieces of functionality, take that test and learn approach, and then kind of slowly move towards that goal, kind of set that as the goal, and then, take steps, sustainable steps as an organization to move towards that.
I would completely agree with that. Tim, how do you see it?
I think if you've adopted the composable approach, then you may not be able to, change the whole ecosystem out in one lump go. But if you get to a point where maybe you need a different PIM or a different DAM or a different CMS because your business needs have changed or your experience needs have changed, then actually following these MACH principles should make it a lot easier than it is today to just replace one specific component of that composable architecture. I don't think it'll ever be plug and play, well, not for a long time anyway, but actually you're shortening that lead time of bringing that new, that replacement or that upgraded component into the stack. And if it's been built in a well-formed way, you should be able to do that without any real kind of major impact on other products and systems within that ecosystem. So I think it's a bit of a journey to get on to have complete interchangeability, but I think from where we are today, actually doing piece by piece when you need to is a lot simpler and a lot easier than it has been in the past.
Yeah, it's very true. Maybe in the distant future we can think about it. Maybe that's a future plan for the MACH Alliance in 20 years or so.
It'll be done in a no-code way in a few years. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's also true. Well, that kind of brings us to the end of the half hour that we had. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I know that, Tim, you have another session in a bit. I think you'll be jumping in and out. But thank you, Iris, also for joining. It was very lovely to speak with you. And I hope that I will see you both soon, at the very latest, in a whole host of MACH Alliance events that are going to be organized next year. So thank you both.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Iris. Thank you, Julian. This was a very insightful talk. I feel it was really interesting to hear a little bit about the history of the MACH Alliance and what its true focus is, to help companies get this best of breed approach. I think we can say it's very clear that the MACH Alliance has formed its own ecosystem. Now we're going to move on to our next talk, and Selina, please introduce us to our next speakers.
For sure. So for our last talk, it's our final talk of this evening. We're giving the mic back to Alan. We're also going to have Christopher back and Tim. And our new addition is going to be Chris from Netlify. And so they're a platform where developers can build dynamic websites, e-commerce stores, web applications. So moving on swiftly to the next talk. And see you after. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Selina, once again. So we are now being joined in this technology ecosystem and MACH Alliance from Stories from the Blok Tailored for Technology panel by Christopher from Commerce Tool, who was with us earlier today, Tim from Profound, who just jumped from the other conversation, and I want to give the opportunity to Chris from Netlify to warm up his voice, because question number one will go to him afterward. Chris, the floor is yours.
Very nice to meet everyone. I'm Chris Black, Christian Black, Chris for short, co-founder, CSO and CEO of Netlify, developer platform that used to tie together all those wonderful MACH solutions where you have all these different modules, best-in-class components that can then meet a viable workflow and orchestration platform, developer workflow for deployment and distribution, and connecting everything, and that's what Netlify sort of does. So that's what we do. I also sit on the board of the MACH Alliance.
Thank you very much for that quick intro, Chris. And because the threat was real, the first question for today's panel goes to you. What series of events led to the birth of the MACH concept? And actually, there's a second part to that. How does it differentiate from other terms such as composable, Jamstack, decoupled, and the list can go on and on?
Yeah, I think like all those terms are slightly different, but all center around this move of legacy monoliths, right, for the web. And I think this started around 10 years ago, right, where you saw the very first sort of headless solutions for commerce and content management and so on, right, where essentially the front end and the back end have been decoupled. But it was super nascent and there wasn't talk about a space yet. And so we at Netlify we're sort of seeing, hey, this is a better way to build for the web. Like if you separate your building from your hosting, you're going to get something that's infinitely more scalable. And you can get something that's much more performant. And there was a lot of good reasons for that, because you no longer had that single point of origin, huge monolith that had to do everything. Now you could use just what you wanted best in class, and then you could have multiple points of origin, right? Because the entire site could be pre-built and live on edge nodes all over the world, and then you would use the browser more as a runtime. And I think that we came out trying to provide a working platform for that, which in the beginning very much focused on developers. I think any sort of tech ecosystem starts in a very developer bottom-up fashion, right? Where you very much focus on tech and not on use cases, right? So it's more sort of what's the technological enablement here. And I think that's sort of was growing ever more, right? And today it's obviously huge, right? At Netlify, we have more than 3 million developers and businesses on the platform. We add more than 100,000 every month, and are really starting to see this take off. But I also think that we're crossing a chasm, right, from niche and growth into maturing market, and I think in that there's a lot more enterprises that are moving looking to move to what we call composable architecture, right? So this decoupled approach. To a large extent, not just for smaller projects. And I think there we start seeing ecosystem coalesce more around use cases, right? More around guidance for these enterprises in this emerging composable landscape, right? And I think that's where MACH Alliance has done a wonderful job, right? In coalescing and around these use cases, right? Focusing primarily in commerce, but growing from there, right? And I think that there's that's why we're seeing this traction, is because it's technologically now viable to prioritize coming to a composable architecture even at larger scale, right? And then when it comes to the different terminologies, I think Jamstack was something that we helped originate, right? Which dealt very much around the best practices of tying these things together, right? So like, how would this work? Like, it's not just enough to have a headless CMS if everything else is a monolith, right? So what are the best practices of how it's working and how it's served as the best web experiences? And I think decouple and headless was used more interchangeable. It was more sort of in the beginning around having a monolith but cutting out the front end but keeping it. And I think composable is more taking the next step of saying, hey, let's make sure that all the parts are composable and it's not just a monolith with a separated front end. MACH, of course, microservice APIs and cloud and headless. And I heard the last talks, I know we talked about this quite a bit, right? But I think it's even more prescriptive of saying it's not just using APIs and microservices, but what should they look like? They should be multi-tenant and SaaS, and providing more of a framework that can guide us as decisions made by enterprises as they invest in this, and for the enterprise architectures to really sort of wrap around what are the best practices there. And so all of this has to do with we're much better off moving off the legacy monoliths. They were great in the beginning. They were necessary in the beginning. Now we have a blooming API economy. There's several places for the runtime, but even more important, I think we're at a place where there's just so many channels, right? There's so much that monolith has to do. And in order to embrace that, they become quite bloated and best in class at nothing, right? And so the price you're paying staying on a monolith today is, in the beginning, it was sort of, you might be able to get an edge by experimenting with these new technologies. And I think it's happened so fast that today we're at a place where if you don't, you're at a decidedly disadvantage, competitively speaking, right? You sort of have to now embrace the technology if you want to keep with the pack. So
it's the next step in the evolution of technology. You have the choice of keeping up with it, or
I think like when we talk to web technology and the technologies behind it as well, and that sort of software development, we see gradual development, right, all the time, and then you see these shifts. And I think from on-prem to cloud was a big shift, right? And I think this embrace of composable architecture now, saying let's move off the web monoliths, that's a shift, right? It's happening very, very fast because there's so many advantages tied to it. And because we live in a world where most businesses, their problems have digital solutions, right? So time to market becomes essential. And so investing in these things becomes something that's not just a nice to have, it's not adjacent, you're not optimizing something on the side of your business. This is it, this is key, this is core.
Thank you very much for that answer, Chris. Christopher, I think this next question should go to you as one of the founding fathers of the MACH Alliance. What are the goals of the Alliance today, and what is the actual value that it brings to the industry? I think you're on mute.
Okay, well, now we'll say founders of the MACH Alliance. I was not part of that. I've only been with the company about a year.
Not you per se, but the company,
right. Yeah, so what I would say is when I talk to my partners about this, it may not be the formal mission statement, but I view it as simply, it eliminates the fear and the friction associated with adopting a composable commerce, composable technology. And in that sense, it builds on the innovations in open source and community. So this was a group of like-minded members of this technology community, and they looked to establish an industry standard definition of MACH, and then basically objectively certify against it. We have UL listing for safety in the U.S. You have different organic certifications that farmers and growers use to basically state our community sets these objective standards and we deliver against them. So that's the first piece. And then, obviously they want to build an awareness of the technology and the ecosystem. This is evangelism. This is making folks aware of all the things that Chris said, the value of the technology. And there is a parallel structure here. There's great technical piece, but it also then translates into really competitive business advantage. And that two pieces, you need to have your evangelist out there in the marketplace. And in the previous presentation, you saw some of the folks in the industry. Tim is one of them as well, who has participated. And it's not just the software providers, it's the cloud hosters, it's folks like Netlify, which we use as part of our end delivery of products to clients. And it's all of the agencies and the SIs who work with it. And so the final thing is, also to be a business and technical resource. So you set the standards, you get the community agreement, but also then you have to propagate the skills and the awareness in the marketplace. So to become a resource for the community, to develop leadership, to develop technologies, certifications, to advocate for the adoption of things like GraphQL and some of the other things that we've done. So it acts like this, community of voluntary evangelical participants who are trying to make the world aware of the value that we bring to the marketplace, while at the same time setting some objective membership standards, along the way to hold to outstanding customer expectations and outcomes.
Thank you. I guess it's similar to when you go to, and you kind of made this analogy as well, you go to the store and you want to buy high quality products. So you check the label and you see a specific stamp of approval. It's pretty much the same in business with the MACH Alliance approval as well. If you're committed to adopting a certain approach to your tech stack, and if that approach is a MACH approach, then you definitely need to look for that logo on it. Tim, the question for you regarding the MACH Alliance would be, how does an agency such as Profound work with the principles of the MACH Alliance?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing to say is that when we made that choice to only work with technology partners that were part of this MACH movement, our entire engineering team were really excited about that. They wanted to work with this more modern technology approach, and they wanted to be able to define new principles, new ways of engineering that actually aligned very, very, very neatly with the principles of the MACH Alliance. So, getting to work with microservices, with APIs first, and all those kind of things from an engineering point of view made total sense for us. But if we think about it from a business point of view, actually what we're trying to do is to deliver more value faster for our customers with kind of less drama and less stress. So the really important thing I think about working with ecosystems within the MACH Alliance is actually, as an experienced design agency, and we want to just treat the products that we assemble together, the technology products we assemble together, as black boxes. We don't want to be cracking open the hood and tinkering with stuff under the hood there. We want to be using those technologies for the things that they're designed, they're specialized for, and then combining those with other best of breed technologies to get the outcomes we're looking for. We want to take data at source. We don't want to be operationalizing data into caches and things like that. So for us as an agency, the principles of the MACH Alliance actually unshackle us really to do better work at better standards and to control the way that we do things, but do it in a way that enables us, as I say, to bring more value faster to the clients with the work that we're doing. And that's the real kind of advantage for us, I think, with regards to those principles.
It's really great to hear the perspective of an agency and this whole tech stack, because I guess, you guys are the ones that do most of the heavy lifting when it comes to understanding the customer pain points and maybe consulting them towards the right solutions for their business. My next question goes back to you, Chris. I hope your voice is no longer rusty anymore.
All good.
Where do you feel like the MACH Alliance is today compared to where it was a few years ago when it first entered the market? And where do you think, what are the possible pitfalls, if there are any, obviously?
Well, I think right now, of course, it's growing very, very fast, right? There's a huge interest from members. There's a lot of fantastic feedback from the users, the enterprises out there, sort of leaning up against MACH Alliance and working with its members. So I think, and it's a great expression of just how quickly the promise of composable is growing, right? I believe Gartner was out there saying 12% of the enterprises said that they would go and use composable, go the composable route if they were building out a new DXP in 2020. And in January 2022, that number was 75%, right? So I think it's also an expression that the market is now really ready, right? This is a better way to build. It's no longer just for developers, right? It's very much something that companies are starting to embrace at scale. And I think the MACH Alliance growth and popularity is very much an expression of that, right? Which is wonderful. And I think, pitfalls can always be there, right? I mean, like when you're dealing with technology, you want to be prescriptive in a certain way because that's putting up guardrails, right? That's leading the path, providing a path and leading the way. And at the same time, right, technology is also constantly evolving. So as any sort of technologically based alliance, you have to be sort of like, hey, what are you out there preaching as being where you're very rigorous and saying, hey, this is best practice. And I think like that's where we're choosing to talk about like moving off the monoliths and using best-in-class components and so on. Like that's what we need to take there with us there, right? And then there's some of the best practices that can change on the way, right? And they should be allowed to do that, right? So I think like a pitfall can always be how prescriptive are you, right? Because if you're not, then it's not, the value sort of goes away. And if you're too prescriptive, then you risk sort of becoming obsolete a little fast or just sending out signals of confusions as you change your mind because you have to along the way, right? So that would be my immediate thoughts on that.
Thank you so much.
But yeah, generally speaking, we're all riding a tsunami, right? Like this is already happening at a point of no return. And the reality is that the vast majority still of properties out there are still building legacy solutions, right? So it's a fun time to be in this space because there's just so much opportunity. And I think like we're really starting to get that broad acceptance that this is a better way. And I say better because it's faster, it's safer, it's cheaper, it's more scalable, right? It is a more cost efficient, right? This is truly a better way to build, right? So,
and I'd echo the tsunami. I was just laughing here. I have spoken with 160 software companies since January 1st, interested in being part of our network and composable commerce. If that's not a tsunami, I don't know what is.
True.
Yeah, I guess it's just a matter of time until you need to step on the wave. Probably there are still businesses that made investments in their current tech stack, even if it's a legacy one, and they kind of want to see all the investment running out, and then they will probably be able to make a switch. And at the same time, I think it's important for us to be there for them now and educate them on the values and what would the benefits be if they make a switch.
Well, the beauty of composable. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Christopher, go ahead.
I was going to say, because you hit on the beauty of it is you don't have to do a rip and replace. With the monoliths, you have to take everything. So you can say, I've made a large investment, but you know what? I need to address personalization or search or PIM. And you can then incrementally implement a composable approach and bring in the PIM. And then next phase project, this idea of a phase project I talked about earlier in my presentation. That's the beauty of this. It is not an all or nothing, right? No. And as soon as you get on this path, everything can fall into place on your terms, respecting the investment you've made, skills, people, and all of that.
I 1000% agree. But I would also say further added argument is that I think it's really important, especially we go into times of a bit of a market crunch where people say, well, we're not ready to invest in something new, right? We were thinking what we got. The cost of doing nothing, right? On average, legacy companies on legacy stacks spend 40% of their budgets on upgrades. You get nothing, right? It's just you just pay for upgrades, right? And your traditional, if you're full legacy, your operational costs are huge. You do all the maintenance yourself. You need a lot more different parts of engineering capability, right? That once you really go through an audit of what it costs to stay put, it very often is not good business at all, right? And then you couple that to the idea that you don't have to move to a composable architecture and finish the move before you start seeing results, but you can slice out a smaller corner of the projects, use only what the dependables of that area, and then build out and then gradually migrate. I think there's a strong argument to be made that even in crunch times, embarking on composable inventions is the right way to go.
I think there are also a lot of businesses and clients out there that just dread the word replatforming. They've been through so many replatforming cycles over the last decade or so that for them, they have a very clear picture of what that means and how challenging it can be. I think it's our job to explain that concept that you don't have to eat the elephant all at once. You can do it all in little chunks, and build your new enterprise over time, rather than perhaps letting them stay in that mindset that actually, if we're going to change, we have to change everything at once. And that's the key thing that I think we often have to help clients overcome, is that realization that was the old way. In many situations, you don't have to follow that approach. You can do it a bit more gracefully.
Completely agree. Another question for you, Chris. This is because I went to the MACH Alliance's website so many times, and the thing that always caught my attention was the fact that there's a category there named enablers, where Netlify is one of the position fillers. How does that work for you? What does it mean to be an enabler in the MACH Alliance?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're really sort of the inaugural members of the enablers, and I'm glad you asked, right? It's because I think the when you build out with MACH members, right, you can get best-in-class commerce, right? You can get best-in-class continuity, but using those modules in themselves, if you couple that to a huge operational spider web of doing everything yourself on a legacy cloud provider, for example, right, then a lot of the promises that composable architecture sets will not be freed, right? They will not be kept. And so the potential lies, for example, in a much faster time to market, right? And developer workflows that are fantastic. Let's say you have a great way of doing that with your content system and with your commerce system. But if you still have to hand things over for implementation and it takes 4 years or 4 months or whatever before something is live, right? Then those advantages are mute, right? The same goes for performance. Using headless solutions, very often, they are part of solutions that load much faster and get much higher conversion rates because of the speed, but they themselves are sort of enabling that. That's not the delivery. The delivery of that comes from the web experience. So you need to make sure that you're also using the best practices for that part in order to get that super fast time to first byte. And that's really what Netlify provides, is the enabler category, right? So you have on your back end the best way of building out with composable modules, but you need a viable way to tie it all together. You need an orchestration platform, and you need to follow best practices in order to have those sub-second time to first bytes and those effortless sort of, it's not about being better at setting varnish caching. It's about never having to do it again, right? It's about abstracting so much of that operation and turning it into code. And it's when you couple the best-in-class composable modules, solutions on the back end through that workflow, that you get true composable architecture, where you actually can free the potential, right, of performance and a bunch of the other things as well, right? So that's the enabler category. we enable MACH solutions to actually be super viable and be best in class and be so fast and be so secure and so scalable and so on, right? So it's part of the possible. I like to say that we are an orchestration platform, right, where developers and companies very easily can come and plug in things like commerce tools and Storyblok, right, to create cohesive, great web projects, web applications, websites.
As a follow-up question, but this one would go to Tim. Are agencies, from your perspective, do you think they can be considered enablers for customers or for technology solutions? And Tim, I would really want to hear the perspective from a guy that has an agency and has worked with dozens of projects.
It's probably a pretty uncontroversial view. I think as an agency, we're here to make our clients successful. We have to enable them, and we use technology to enable that success. So it's a bit of a tricumbent of a relationship there. But yeah, ultimately we're here for our clients. We want the best outcomes for them, and it's up to us to find the right mix of technology to achieve those outcomes. And that's how we get. So we enable agencies, and I think technology enables us to enable our agents, to enable our clients.
I certainly second that. The amount of time that we spend developing, we call them accelerators, but they're bundled offerings, led by an SI or an agency with a specific group of 3 to 4 technologies with a demonstrated value prop, whether it's geo or industry. The agencies and the SIs are as valuable to us as our coders are to build our own product, as well as the third-party products we work with. So this is that self-reinforcing, or Steele Bezos's flywheel idea. We need each other, and then that collaboration builds the creativity that ends up being better solutions for our end clients.
1,000%. Like you also work incredibly close with agencies, right? And they're a big part of that puzzle, for sure, right? But it's enabling in 2 different parts of it, right? So slightly different meanings here, right? You still need someone to go and help with the implementation, and also just I think agencies are super interesting, have changed their role, right, to be much more technological advisors, software creators. They'll help their clients even hire developers, right? And 10 years ago, when I was in agencies, right, it was a very different game. There was a lot more slogan selling and a lot more, we'll build whatever they want to, right? We're not very opinionated on the technology, and now that's just way too central a part for that to be a viable tactic.
Yeah, and that's a great observation, because that's the big change. We talked about the tech and the MACH versus monoliths, but it's had a huge impact on the channels and the ecosystem, because it used to be, and Tim, you tell me, 10 years ago, a third or a half of your business was spinning up the hosted environment, posting the different maintenance updates and all that kind of stuff. That goes away with the cloud. Part of that value of the whole MACH thing is it's taken off, and it's provided by the software and hosting providers, which means our agencies and our SIs have to focus on a different level of value. That idea of trusted advisor, the industry expert that comes in with a challenger seller mentality, or a real prescriptive idea to approach an industry. That's the value, and the successful players like Tim's company in this space come to the market with that. There are a whole lot of customer partners who are just around to pick up basically the cleaning and the maintenance people, and that business is gone. So you have to be forward thinking in order to survive and thrive in the MACH world.
Yeah, and to be clear, we were glad to see the back of that sort of work as well. It's not very fulfilling. It doesn't really add value. As we were saying earlier, you want the time that we spend with our clients. We want it to be time that they cherish. You don't cherish the time you spend with your cleaner. You cherish the time that you spend with your family and your partners and your friends and things like that, if you want to use that metaphor. And we want to be a trusted advisor, strategic partner, and just keeping software alive and support, making sure it doesn't go down on Black Friday and things like that. Those are not necessarily the interesting things that we can do to deliver the client. They're essential things that have to happen. But what you guys have done over the last decade or so is taken that problem away from us and given us the opportunity to be more strategic with our customers and to, secure ongoing revenue opportunities that are more value add to clients. We build better relationships. We have longer lasting clients, because quite often you'd find that at the end of a project, quite a lot of that budget was, as you were saying, just going into it's that time again. You're going out of support. We've got to upgrade you, and you can't do that really interesting new development or idea that you had over there because we've got to spend 6 months going through this really complicated upgrade cycle. So I don't miss those days at all, Christopher, to be honest. So.
I don't think anyone does.
Yeah.
Christopher, I have a question for you, and this is mostly because I consider you for today at least an expert in the whole technology ecosystem realm. This is the hat that I've kind of attributed to you on my own. Apologies if that's not the case or not, but I don't want us to go through the whole history of the ecosystems, but in your opinion, what do you think is the next step for the ecosystems? What is ecosystem 2.0, for example?
I think
coming?
ecosystem 2.0, I think is going to build on this idea of the bundled, again, we call them accelerators, but it isn't going to be point products and skilled people who do it. It's going to be more larger solutions, building on the idea there of fewer choices, but better fits. And I think it's going to gravitate to folks like Profound that are trusted advisors in the higher level strategy. The low margin maintenance work is gone. And so it will be clustered around natural groups of technology like the MACH Alliance, industry solutions that bundle things together. Now, whether it's a single catalog number that one vendor sells and it's, bill of materials, I don't know, what that'll look like. But in terms of, it will be going to the process manufacturing industry or the chemical industry and saying, this is the modernization play, and it will have, small, medium, or large. It will have, either a geo or a very specific horizontal industry approach, and that'll be what I think is next. Until we get to quantum computing, which will be a revolution that changes everything that we're investing in now, but that's a long way away. But I think it's simply amping up the value add as a trusted advisor and the more strategic guidance. That would be my take. It's certainly what we're working on, and my approach with my ecosystem is to build towards that, because it's what the customers are telling us. That, you see all these things. Most customers have made a buy decision. 70% of customers have shortlisted or made a buy decision before they reach out to a company to talk to a sales rep. Well, that's huge in this industry. And what are they telling us? They want industry-specific solutions with people who know their industry and know what they're talking about. Customers have just told us what the next iteration of the ecosystems will be. It's on us to get there.
I was just going to say that I think that's kind of already happening, and agency partners are some, or maybe in the driver's position for that. A lot of them do have like preferred technologies that they want to work with. Obviously, they're open to working with others depending on the needs of the project, but at the same time, we have like these Shopify specialized agencies or Commerce Tool specialized agencies or Netlify or so on. I mean, we already see the initial steps of taking ecosystem or transforming ecosystem 2.0 into reality and not just something that we aim for. Now, talking about ecosystems, I have a question for all of you, but I would like to start with Tim because I know he has maybe an unpopular opinion about it. How do you guys feel about categorizing partnerships? And it doesn't really matter what do you want to call the level, if it's bronze, silver, gold, or premium, it doesn't really matter. Does it have an effect on the engagement? And Tim, as I was saying, I want to put you on the spotlight for the moment.
Wow. Throw me to the wolves. Hopefully it's not too controversial, but I think from an agency point of view around the levels of partnership, I think it's just from our perspective, if you're being compared in a competitive scenario against people that have got certain partnership levels, I think you need to the clients really need to understand what it actually means if someone is, for instance, bronze, silver, or gold, because sometimes we're a fairly small boutique agency. We're probably never going to do as many projects as a global SI in a year, or or do as much revenue. So if those are the metrics behind, meeting those levels, then I think there's a bit of polarization that can occur there. So I think as long as it's really clear to the clients who are asking for a recommendation to a partner or researching what partners exist to help them with a problem as to what that actually means, then I think it's okay. I think from our perspective, I think it'd be nice to know that when these partnership kind of categorizations are being developed, that actually there's a way for you to be assessed on your merit, not just on your size or on your revenue or something like that. But actually, do you do good work? Do you get great feedback from clients? Are you retained a lot? Does your projects never get referred back to the vendors because things have gone wrong? Stuff like that are all really, I think, key performance indicators that should also be considered when classifying agencies. But I totally get why there needs to be that level of classification. I think it can really help inspire and motivate agencies to actually upskill and to learn more and get more people trained on it. But sometimes there's only a certain number of people that you have in your business that can get to those levels. So for an agency like us, the size of, we are about 40 people, we might never ever make it up to a level of someone like I don't know, Accenture or someone like that, because it'd be impossible for us to do that in the short term.
Thank you very much for that. No, I wasn't trying to throw you under the bus, but I know that agencies probably have it more difficult because they don't really have their own categorization system. They usually fall within these systems. So that's why I wanted to have your answer first. Yeah. Chris, I want to hear your opinion on that because I know you also need to leave soon. So really interested to hear about what's your take on having these categories amongst partners. Does it benefit or does it do anything else for the relationship that you have with SIs and with tech partners?
Category, it's also like that can also mean a lot of different things. Like you can categorize, sort of saying, "Hey, is this over in workflow, or is it e-commerce, or what?" So, what do you mean
just by level, as in let's
like
call it maybe expertise
tiering.
Yeah.
Oh, the tiering. Yeah. I mean, I do think that it makes sense to some extent, like because what you're saying, let's say you have a vendor that have a tier with a preferred partner. What it does mean is that that those two have worked together closely. That means that there's case studies that you would expect to be there. That means that you're going to have to assume that there's a working team there that knows how to use this, that has integrated with it before, and so on, right? So I think those kinds of tiers is more for what is the promise that it carries, or what does it imply for the end user. Now that doesn't, like, sometimes it's a little more sort of cynically commercially applied, right? Where it doesn't actually carry that guarantee in it, but if it's applied correctly, then it is an expression of, hey, these are two parties that have worked closely together, and that in turn will be better be able to cater you, right? I mean, I think that's the basic nature of it. So for me, like, tiered partnerships can make sense, right? I just think that you have to be very intentional around it and very clear around it, right? What does it mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll pick up on that because I introduced a 3-tier program this year, and it does make a difference whether it's the ISV tech partner or whether it's the services partner, because our basic requirement is a certified technical integration between the third-party product and at least one of our microservice APIs. Whether you're registered selector premier, that is the same technological hook. So in that sense, my tiering is more of a marketing thing than anything else. But to Tim's point, on our SI side of the business and agencies, the different levels are level of skill, number of certified developers. So it's a capacity sizing. But you're right, three certified Commerce Tools developers have the same skill set as 10, but the agency with 10 has capacity for more jobs or a larger job. And then again, it tends to be a marketing thing. They commit to a certain level of business development in exchange for a level of marketing or marketing development funds. So there are two ways to look at it. One is it, technical integration? Yes, it's a pass fail, yes, no. And is it basic skill set? So the skills at Deloitte are exactly the same as the skills at Profound for the people who have the certifications. It's just Deloitte can put 500 people on a project and Tim probably looks to put 5 or 10. But it has no bearing on the quality. So when you look at those, that's what I would say. And the agencies know how to position that, and it's their business. It's either we're a boutique quality player or we're a big main market player. So.
Yeah. And it's easy to have that conversation when you're originating the conversation. It's just sometimes when we've had situations in the past where we've been disqualified from opportunities because we haven't met a certain standard, and you don't get the opportunity to try and explain the nuance behind your partnership level and things like that. But I think you guys are much more clearer with regards to what it actually means to be in one of those tiers than perhaps other players in the historic marketplace.
Thank you all for the answers. And I know Chris needs to leave us now. I only have a couple of questions which I will gladly take on with Christopher and Tim. I'm sure that it's going to be a very big debate because I've saved, I think, some of the best ones, the more conflictual ones for the end of the conversation. So sorry, you will need to leave us, Chris. But
yeah, sorry to miss out on that. But yeah, it was a pleasure. I have an interview waiting, so I think I should. The journalist is getting a little impatient. But I'm gonna jump. Thank you so much for having me. Super interesting conversation. Looking forward to connecting with everyone here on the call again. And anyone that's interested in conversation, continuing the conversation outside, please hit me up on social, email, anything. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Cheers, Chris. Bye.
Here, Chris. So my next conversation, which I would have addressed to everyone in the audience today, for all the attendees today, was how do you feel like when it comes to building integrations, who should do that? Should it be the technology solutions or should it be the agency? And Christopher, maybe you would want to go first on that.
Yeah, that is a controversial. So my answer to this is it depends. All right. I would tell you, I've been in an 11-person startup company years ago. No one knew who we were. If we wanted to build out an eco network, we had to do the work. So, all technology companies have someone in tech partnerships. They have a reference API or a data schema, and they say, hey, guys, code to us and do it. So if you're not in a power or a strength position, you have to do it yourself, or you have to pay someone to do it. I'm fortunate here. Actually, I have a dual nature here with our composable commerce. We're an established player, so people come to us and we can say, you need to code to us. We have a new front end product that is new in the marketplace. And so, many of our ISVs are saying, we're going to wait for a little more common. Usually they say, we'll wait for a common customer and then we'll build it. So it's kind of a delay, it's a show me. So, I've been on both sides of this, and I think it's just pragmatic. If you're in a position where the other party will develop it at their expense, of course you say yes. I mean, that's the nature of the business. They see value in it. They're willing to make an investment. It shows skin in the game, a willingness to make an investment and work. But the flip side is, if you don't have that desirability or that pull in the marketplace, you have to do it yourself. You just have to, or you go out of business waiting for someone to come up with a common customer. So I think you just have to be pragmatic and accept the business reality.
I like that salesman answer that it depends. It was a very good one.
But it
truly depends. Yeah. Tim, what's your opinion on it? Considering probably in most cases, a lot of the projects that you work on do require some sort of integration between all of the technologies that the customers want to bring in.
Yeah, I think the reality of what's certainly occurred over the last few years is that most of us who have been working in this space have been building our own integrations and trying to productize that to have some kind of ongoing value, whether that's acceleration in the next project or something that you can sell in as a bit of IP into a client or something like that. I think that's been going on, and that's nothing new. People have been doing that for forever in software projects. You always want to have your own kind of IP and your own way of doing stuff. But I think I would imagine that where the opportunity lies in this space now, in the MACH space, is that actually if there are common solutions like you were explaining earlier, Christopher, for certain verticals or certain sectors, that actually having pre-configured experiences that come out of the box that maybe is more authored by the vendors rather than by the agencies, that will be really helpful. Plumbing together a pharmaceutical based kind of search and discovery with commerce and what have you, that comes out of the box doing 80% of what the SI would need to build. That creates a really compelling commercial proposition for agencies to go out there and sell. It's a bit different to actually saying, well, you can go headless, or you can go MACH, but actually we've got to also invest a bit of time in building out the integrations that we need to do. And so before you actually see anything coming out of the sausage machine, we're going to have to do all of this integration work. I think that is the problem we need to solve there, is that time to value, right? And as I say, agencies have been investing in that in their, off of the back of projects they've been doing over the last few years already. And I see a situation where Commerce Tools and Co are actually helping us in very specific areas to come with some of that pre-assembled kind of kit that we can save on some of the integration as well. But moving forward, I think it'd be very difficult to have like a whole suite of integrations just provided by the technology partners out there, because there's just going to be so much out there to integrate with. So I think it will have to be kind of grounded in commonality across projects.
Yeah, I've seen it a number of ways. So, if you go out on our webpage for our partners, you'll see some, and it depends whether you're an agency SI or whether you're the ISV, because we have some agencies and SIs who have developed these connectors, and to Tim's point, they use them as proprietary IP, so it helps make their integrations quicker, more profitable, all of that. And they don't want to be in the business of being a software company. So they're glad to support their services as custom development, build, and all that. Then you have some who have no issues with being a software company. So they create these connectors, which they go out and they license for however much a year. And they have level 1, 2, 3 support desk. They're prepared to do, 12 by 5 or whatever support, and act like a software company. And then, whereas many software companies I work with will create the connector, and then they either distribute it as part of their license or they put it out in public domain because they don't want to deal with having to manage the services. They simply make it an enabling component out there. So a lot of it's your business model and what you're willing to do. And to Tim's point, the combination of an industry specific, and I tend to see clusters with our SIs. They kind of work with the same 1 or 2 CMS. They always choose one search provider. They always choose 1 or 2 payment services providers. So those clusters tend to have then these integrations led by an SI. So it's a turnkey. So there are various business models. This is part of the dynamicism in this space. And when I talk about, the competition is good because it drives innovation and drives options for our clients. This is one of those situations.
And the only other thing I'd add to this is I think it'd be interesting to see how the next 3 or 4 years play out, where I think you're going to have a lot of mediation layers or integration layers that have been built by agencies and sold in to their clients as part of their IP value prop. But if that relationship with that agency or SI breaks down and they want to find a new partner to work with them, what are we going to do about the IP that exists in that middleware? Because the agency is not going to want to leave it behind, but the client still wants to work with a new agency to support it. So I think we're going to be having these conversations and these negotiations around where people have followed that model to license in something in the integration space. How do you extract that from a relationship if the client wants to move on to another partner?
Who gets custody of the children after the divorce,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
The other thing I've noticed, so I spent a lot of time in the middleware business 20 years ago, and there's a lot of old technology, 3-tier, point-to-point stuff. And I've noticed I've had 3 or 4 companies talk to me this year who have basically moved that one-to-many or many-to-one integration area. So the old enterprise service bus or Gentran, B2B integrator, that kind of stuff. There are a few companies out there who basically push that up on the cloud to do a similar. It hasn't gotten quite the traction yet because many of the point-to-point integrations do everything you need because of the advancements in APIs and the value of MACH, which obviates some of that need. But it's still there, and it's mostly in the transitional space. So, net new applications are easy because there's lots of choices in the cloud world. But if I've got a large, any of the big three middlewares in the background, if I'm trying to modernize that and bring it forward, there's a lot of transitional stuff. As use my example on organic food. If you're a transitional farm, it takes you several years to get clean enough to be organic, and I think we're seeing that. So I don't think the market's made up their mind there. But 20 years ago, there were a lot of point-to-point or one-to-many standalone connection integration software companies that are out there. You don't see that yet in the cloud space.
Thank you both for that debate on what approach should someone have around integration. And because we've kind of extended our stay, I will just ask you both the last question that I prepared for today. So we've talked a lot about ecosystems, we talked about the MACH Alliance, but I would say that at the core of it, or what's driving all of this, are our customers. So let's say that you've already won the deal with the customer. What's next? How do you actually manage to win their heart? And Tim, I would want you to go first for this last question.
It seems pretty obvious to me, but yeah, I'll tell you what we try and do. So we'll spend time building a partnership with our clients before we start the project. So we've got to build that relationship, build that trust, get to know them, get to know their challenges and their pain points, and help them feel confident that we're going to help them overcome those things and deliver success. And then secondly, we have to make sure that our team in the agency understands the problems that have to be solved. So we don't want to have that concept of A team and B team going into a client there. We've got to make sure that whoever's done the discovery and the initial engagement hangs around on the project and make sure that the rest of the team that does the delivery understands the client well and can carry on building building on that great relationship that's already been formed. And then a final few things, basically always have to deliver on your promises and don't promise things you can't do. Help the customer to adapt and grow in this space. This is probably going to be the first project that they've done with MACH technology, and things have to be a little bit different in the clients' businesses. So you have to help them understand what they need to do to change, how they can change, and what the opportunities are for modernization there. And you can't just leave them to that. You've got to take them on that journey. And then finally, if you just have to make your stakeholders and your project team look successful. And if you can do that, you've won their hearts, I'd say.
And I'll second everything Tim says, and I'll throw it to the one sentence I use. Exceed their expectations with regards to time to value. It's as simple as that. It's all of the concepts that Tim's talked about. But if the customer doesn't get up and using that software, we've all wasted our time and effort. It becomes shelfware. You don't get the renewal. The customer, more importantly, doesn't get the value. And so focusing everyone on getting the customer's time to value, the shortest reasonable period, is probably the single best thing for everyone involved. The customer gets the satisfaction in the use. We as businesses deliver our value promise, which allows us to remain, suppliers and trusted advisors to our end clients. So,
gentlemen, it has been a pleasure to discuss with you today, and thank you for being so patient and answering all my questions. I do appreciate you taking the time and having us, helping us with organizing the event today. Hopefully it's going to be the first one of many that we will do together. With him, I know we already did something quite recent, but with you, Chris, this is like an open invitation.
I always say yes to dinner invitations. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again. I see that we do not have questions from the audience. So with that, enjoy the rest of the evening. Go back to your families, and I will pass back the mic to Anna and Selina.
Thanks, Alan. Good to see you, Chris.
Same here.
Thank you, everyone. This has been an amazing event. I feel like for me, the biggest learning from today is the fact that an ecosystem is truly a crucial part of any organization looking to grow and expand. I mean, after all, at the end of the day, you're only as strong as your partners are. And I feel like, here at Storyblok, that's exactly how we focus. We're not looking to just build partnerships or just business relationships, but an actual ecosystem where we each help each other be the best versions of ourselves.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Anna. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who was able to join us as speakers for Stories of the Block 9th edition. Thanks, Anna, for hosting this with me. It was quite a bit of fun. And for anyone who's tuning in, who wants to know more about our ecosystem, about our partner portal, anything about that, we'll link that in the YouTube channel. And yeah, you can just reach out to our team and we'll be happy to discuss this a little bit more. On that note, have a good day, night, wherever you are, and see you at our next event.
Bye-bye.
Bye.